excited to be here with all of you and with my friends from the Demo Lab and the Reynolds Foundation. So you've heard from very brave activists from Serbia, from Russia, from Zimbabwe, how much financial repression affect and impact their work and the struggle for freedom in general. So we want to talk today about how to close the gap between where freedom is under attack around the world and where philanthropy funding flows. Because as you've heard, there is a huge gap between where global giving is going and where the money is actually needed. And one of the reasons for that is that oftentimes it is very difficult, dangerous, or almost impossible to get money to the people living under oppressive regimes. And the activists you've heard are a great example. And they are, you know, thousands of them who are working on this fight and are unable to do their work because they're unable to get funds. So I want to ask Álvaro about his work at the Reynolds Foundation. And, you know, when you started the Reynolds Foundation, you realized that there was an imbalance in the democracy ecosystem, that there was a huge gap, again, between where freedom is under attack and funding actually goes. And you wanted to rebalance the philanthropy funding towards fighting dictatorships. So tell us, why do you think that gap exists, and what are you doing to actually address that problem?
Thank you very much, Céline. First and foremost, thank you to the Human Rights Foundation and 𝐻𝐿𝐼 and SALT organizers for putting this panel together and all this amazing group of freedom fighters that are teaching us from hyperinflation in Zimbabwe to the importance use of Bitcoin in Russia and also in other countries. Second, it's an honor to be in this panel with two of my personal heroes. On one side, my mentor and good friend, and on the other side, actually, my wife. So you never have those opportunities. So I'm very grateful. I'm Álvaro Salas. I'm from Costa Rica. And to Celine's question, as you guys know, we're facing a defiance of the democracy and freedom movement around the world. Tim Reynolds, our founder and our chairman, was also the co-founder of Jane Street Capital. And he wanted to devote it mostly his wealth into fighting dictators around the world, because he thinks, and we all think, at least at the Reynolds Foundation, that the biggest threat to humanity is the rise of populist dictators and the rise of autocrats. So we have seen that for other philanthropists, which are doing what we call cookie-cutter philanthropy, right? Giving up to the alma maters, to the YMCAs, to the local churches, to education, to clean water. That's important. Those things are really important. But in the last 10 years, the erosion of democracy and the erosions of liberal democracies around the world is vast. We're completely losing the battle. So we're trying to create investment vehicles for other philanthropists to join us in this fight. First, because they don't have the investment vehicles to do it. The second one is an investment banking approach to philanthropy in freedom and democracy around the world, where we can bring other philanthropists into the table, and they can consider joining this fight and investing in organizations such as the Human Rights Foundation or Democracy Lab, for instance, with proper due diligence that we already carried for them, with years and years of trial and error in different pilot projects, diminishing those learning curves when investment is important in these countries. And the third thing is doing this with pathological optimism. And let that sink for a second. Right now, in the last 10 years, 60 countries had eroded their democracies. In the last just year, we lose 3 liberal democracies around the world. Céline mentioned some of the deficits and the data points that we're trying to address. In less than 10 years, we moved from 50% of living under authoritarian regimes to 70% plus.
72%.
72%.
And 2 years ago, it was 54%. So we're going through a democratic recession.
Those numbers are alarming, and they keep us awake. So to finalize the first point from Celine's question, we're trying to provide not only an investment banking approach to philanthropy, provide due diligence to other philanthropists to join us and consider these projects with risk. If you're a risk taker, we have a tier for you. If you don't want a lot of risk, we have a tier for you. Provide that due diligence and those learning curves. And finally, to the use of sophisticated tools and investment vehicles such as Venture Capital Fund for Freedom or the creation of a freedom accelerator, bring other philanthropists into the fight where they can join us in this process.
Noemi, you work on Latin America. Your organization is based in Costa Rica. You promote democracy both in Costa Rica and in the region. What barriers have you seen to get money to the people who are doing this work on the ground in these countries?
Yes, this is exactly what we're there for. Costa Rica is a beacon of light in a region that's extremely facing lots of challenges. In terms of being that last standing beacon, we need to act and be that helper. And so one of our neighbors is Nicaragua, and we've been helping. Demolab has been a fiscal sponsor for the NGOs that got defunded, debanked by Ortega's regimes, and we've been helping them continue their operations and support them. We're also helping Bolivia with the recent election that happened on Sunday, and we helped really monitor if the elections were done in a fair and democratic way. And so it's important for the regions that are still standing, like Costa Rica, to be that helper, and this is the core way that we've been helping on the ground.
At the Human Rights Foundation, as Alex mentioned, Bitcoin has been a very powerful tool for us to get money directly to the people who are working on the ground, instantly, securely, without, of course, government permission. And from my experience, we've seen so many movements organized thanks to Bitcoin. Protests were being, happened thanks to Bitcoin, because otherwise, people cannot organize, cannot build the movement. Election monitoring through volunteers and helpers paid through Bitcoins. There are so many examples from Afghanistan, women being paid under the Taliban rule thanks to Bitcoin. So I want to know from your experience, how have you used Bitcoin as a tool to get the money to the people directly who are working on, on fighting democracy on the ground?
So from the experience of the Reynolds Foundation, the most recent case that is already on the news is Venezuela. We have helped the Venezuelan resistance thanks to Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is money that dictators hate. It's decentralized, it's efficient, we can go from wallet to where the fight is, on the front lines. Especially after a lot of organizations got dodged in the freedom space, USAID, the National Endowment of Democracy, the International Republican Institute, the Wilson Center, from the left, from the right, from the center, they got defunded. Bitcoin has become a tool for philanthropists to actually implement those strategies in the front lines. So a lot of the political activists right now in Venezuela not only have been protected, they have access to security, to food, transportation, gasoline, as trivial that this sounds, to keep the fight down there. And some of them have been extradited to other countries for political asylum thanks to the support of Bitcoin. Another one that we have seen, as Noemi was saying, is in Nicaragua and Bolivia with the case studies that she mentioned. But what is happening right now and in the future of what is going on, at least in the Americas, which is something that we have been focused on, Bitcoin has become a tool to work directly with the freedom fighters, directly with organizations that have been defunded, and also for other philanthropists to join this fight as efficient, with accountability, and also with the support of organizations like ours that, as I said, has done the due diligence to support these movements already.
And at DemoLab, we built a proactive education platform that covers civic and financial empowerment, and we're distributing the stories of the freedom fighters that we heard today to share how Bitcoin is used to really take back the control in the hands of the people who need it the most. And we developed this curriculum of freedom in partnership with Cornell, who certified our curriculum, and it's now Cornell University has a stamp of approval of our platform that we're sharing by meeting our youngsters where they're at. So we want to meet them in the surf camps in Costa Rica, in the waves, or in basketball courts, or in the classrooms online, and really teach what it means to be actively engaged in defending freedom. We need to train those future leaders to care about it today. And so we're acting in a proactive way to tackle not just the territories that are under authoritarian regimes, but the ones that are not yet and are at risk.
And going back to closing the gap that we discussed at the beginning, so the Reynolds Foundation partnered with Syracuse University for this big research about basically mapping the ecosystem of the democratic ecosystem, understanding the supply and demand. Why is democracy underfunded? How can we address that? What are the needs of the people on the ground? Tell us about this research and how this kind of research actually helps your work with people in Latin America and in the civil society in the region.
That's a great question, Céline. So right now, research for us is one of the most important tools to understand the fight and the size of the fight and the scope of the fight. The philanthropic pie in the United States is around $400 billion. As the video mentioned at the beginning, only 1% of those $400 billion goes to freedom and democracy, and less than 0.7% of that 1% goes to authoritarian regimes, which is virtually mathematically nothing. So we're trying to understand, not only from the perspective of the ecosystem of funders, but also from the activists in the front lines. What are their challenges? What are their needs? What do they actually need and deserve to keep the fight going? And some of us, we will think that they will need mechanisms of, let's say, technology for elections. Some of them, you will think that they will need funding for training and education. But a lot of them, they need support for mental health, for instance. And we just found out, thanks to research. A lot of them are burned out. A lot of them are in the front lines for a long periods of time, as you saw with Ewan and what his family faced in Zimbabwe, and what also the Navalny family faced in Russia. Those things take a toll as human beings. But if we come with a funding colonial top-to-bottom approach to, oh, what you need is this, we're missing out what's actually the fight and the leaders of the fight needing for making this happen. So this research is helping us to better understand from their perspective, right, their needs, their challenges, their milestones, their hopes, and their dreams, and for us as funders to put together an ecosystem of other philanthropies that are interested in supporting those gaps. And the second point, what Céline mentioned, is that our foundation is committing a sizable amount of money, thanks to the Reynolds family, for the next 10 years. But it's just a drop of water. If we really want to move the needle in this, we need to mobilize around $40 billion in the next 10 years in countries in Latin America, in the Global South, in Africa, in Asia, if we really want to make an impact and make a dent on this field.
And this type of research is absolutely needed for organizations like Demolab, because we are having conversations with sophisticated donors and funders. We want to bring them the data that proves that this is the problem they need to be investing in right now, and that we are a vetted organization that has impact and is actually measurable. We can show them.
Financial repression is one of the biggest obstacles to advancing democracy around the world. So I think the statistics that the video shows are very alarming, and it is something that everyone should be concerned about. So we're working together to take that 0.05% or whatever it is, you know, of course, much higher. And thanks to organizations like the Reynolds Foundation, we hope to get to a higher number very soon. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.